Clara stood at the bank counter, her modest dress drawing smirks from the tellers. She'd come to claim ownership of an account her late father left her, but the manager scoffed. You? An owner? Prove it. Clara's voice was calm, but her hands trembled as she slid a faded document across the counter. The manager barely glanced at it, tossing it aside with a chuckle. This is a serious bank, ma'am. The tellers exchanged glances, their laughter barely concealed. Clara's claim seemed absurd to them. She looked like she belonged in a small-town diner, not a high-stakes financial institution. Maybe check your papers again, one sneered. Clara's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. She knew the truth, even if they didn't. Her father's legacy was tied to this bank, and she wasn't leaving without answers. Outside, the city buzzed with wealth, sleek cars, tailored suits, and towering glass buildings. Clara felt out of place but undeterred. She'd spent years piecing together her father's cryptic letters, which pointed to a fortune hidden in this very bank. The document she carried was worn but authentic, signed by her father decades ago. She clutched it tighter, her resolve hardening against their mockery. Back inside, the manager, Mr. Grayson, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Miss, we deal with billionaires, not dreamers," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. Clara's voice was steady. "Check the account number again." Grayson sighed, humoring her. He typed the number into the system, expecting nothing. The screen flickered, and his smug grin faltered. "This can't be right," he muttered. The account was real, linked to a massive holding company. Grayson's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his confidence shaken. "This must be a mistake," he said, louder now, as if convincing himself. Clara stood silently, her gaze unwavering. The tellers, sensing the shift, stopped giggling. One whispered, "Is she serious?" Clara's lips twitched into a faint smile. She knew what was coming next. Grayson called for a supervisor, his voice tight. "We need to verify this," he said, avoiding Clara's eyes. The supervisor, Ms. Lang, arrived, her heels clicking sharply. She skimmed the document, her expression unreadable. "This is highly irregular," she said, but her tone lacked the earlier dismissal. Clara remained calm, her hands folded. She'd waited years for this moment. A few more minutes wouldn't hurt. The bank's system showed the account held billions, tied to a trust in Clara's name. Lang's brow furrowed as she cross-checked the records. "This account hasn't been accessed in decades," she said, glancing at Clara with new curiosity. The tellers now watched in silence, their earlier laughter replaced by unease. Clara's simple appearance didn't match the wealth on the screen, and it unnerved them. "We'll need more proof," Lang said, her voice professional but cautious. Clara nodded, reaching into her worn bag. She pulled out a second document, a letter from her father's lawyer, notarized and sealed. Lang's eyes widened as she read it. "This names you as the sole beneficiary," she said, almost to herself. Grayson shifted uncomfortably, his earlier arrogance gone. The room felt smaller, tenser. Clara's thoughts drifted to her father, a quiet man who'd built an empire in secret. He'd never flaunted his wealth, teaching her to value simplicity. Now, standing in this gleaming bank, she felt his presence guiding her. "I just want what's mine," she said softly. Lang hesitated, then nodded. "We'll need to escalate this to the board," she said, her tone no longer dismissive but respectful. The bank's boardroom was a world away from Clara's small-town life, mahogany tables, crystal chandeliers, and men in suits who eyed her with skepticism. Lang presented Clara's documents, and the board members murmured among themselves. "This could be a clerical error," one said. Clara sat quietly, her hands clasped. She didn't need their approval, she needed them to do their job and release her funds. As the board debated, Clara's phone buzzed. A text from her husband, "Ethan, on my way." She smiled faintly. Ethan was her rock, a man who'd built his own fortune from nothing. He'd always believed in her, even when she doubted herself. The board didn't know it yet, but Ethan's arrival would change everything. Clara sat back, letting them argue, knowing the truth would soon be undeniable. The board's chairman, Mr. Vaughn, leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Miss, these claims are extraordinary. We can't just hand over billions without verification." Clara met his gaze. "Then verify it," she said simply. Her confidence unsettled him. Lang returned with a laptop, showing encrypted files linked to the account. The room grew quiet as the reality sank in. Clara's claim was no mistake. Outside, a sleek black car pulled up to the bank. Ethan stepped out, his tailored suit a stark contrast to Clara's simplicity. He moved with purpose, his presence commanding attention even before he entered. The doorman hesitated, then opened the door wide. Ethan's wealth was no secret in the financial world, and his arrival sent a ripple of unease through the bank's staff. They sensed a shift. Inside, the board was still deliberating when Ethan walked in. Heads turned, and whispers spread. "Ethan Caldwell," one board member muttered, recognizing the billionaire investor. Clara's eyes met his, and she gave a small nod. Ethan's presence was like a storm rolling in, calm but powerful. "I believe you're discussing my wife's account," he said, his voice low but carrying undeniable authority. Grayson paled, recognizing Ethan instantly. The tellers, who'd mocked Clara earlier, froze. Ethan's reputation preceded him, ruthless in business, fiercely protective of his family. "I'd like to see the documents," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Lang handed them over, her hands unsteady. Ethan skimmed the papers, his expression unreadable, then looked at Clara. "You've got this." Clara stood, her voice clear. "My father left me this account. The documents are authentic. I'm not here to beg, I'm here to claim what's mine." Ethan's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a silent show of support. The board members exchanged glances, their earlier skepticism fading. Vaughn cleared his throat. "We'll need to run final checks," he said, but his tone was far less confrontational now. The bank's legal team was called in, poring over Clara's documents. Every signature, every seal checked out. The account's history traced back to her father's company, a titan in its day. Clara watched them work, her calm demeanor unshaken. Ethan stood by her, his presence a quiet reminder of her strength. The tellers, now silent, avoided her gaze, their earlier laughter a distant memory. Lang returned with a final report. "Everything's verified," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "The account is yours, Mrs. Caldwell." The board members nodded, some reluctantly. Vaughn stood, offering a stiff apology. "We had to be thorough," he said. Clara nodded, gracious but firm. "I understand. Now, I'd like access." Ethan's lips curved into a proud smile, but he said nothing. The room buzzed with tension as the bank prepared to transfer control. Clara's account wasn't just a number, it was a legacy, tied to investments, properties, and global ventures. The tellers, once so quick to judge, now scrambled to assist. Grayson, red-faced, muttered instructions to his staff. Clara remained composed, her focus on the future. She'd fought for this, and she'd won. Ethan leaned in, whispering, "You didn't need me here, but I'm glad I saw this." Clara smiled, squeezing his hand. "I wanted them to see us together," she said. The bank's staff, now fully aware of who they were dealing with, moved quickly to finalize the paperwork. The board, once dismissive, now treated Clara with cautious respect. Her victory was undeniable, and they knew it. As the transfer process began, Clara thought of her father. He'd always said wealth was a tool, not a status. She'd honor that, using the funds to rebuild communities, like he'd dreamed. Ethan, sensing her thoughts, nodded. "He'd be proud," he said softly. Clara's eyes glistened, but she held her composure. This wasn't just about money, it was about proving her place in a world that had underestimated her. The bank's system updated, confirming Clara's ownership. The screen displayed a balance that made even the board members gasp. Billions, untouched for years, now under her control. Lang handed her a secure tablet to access the account. "It's all yours," she said, her earlier skepticism gone. Clara nodded, her fingers brushing the screen. She felt the weight of her father's trust in her hands. Grayson approached, his tone apologetic. "Mrs. Caldwell, we misjudged the situation. Please accept our apologies." Clara looked at him, her gaze steady. "Mistakes happen," she said, her voice kind but firm. "Just don't let it happen again." Grayson nodded, chastened. The tellers, now silent, watched as Clara and Ethan prepared to leave. The bank felt different now, less hostile, more humbled. Outside, the city sparkled under the evening sky. Ethan opened the car door for Clara, his eyes warm. "You handled that like a queen," he said. Clara laughed softly, the tension easing from her shoulders. "I just wanted what was mine," she said. Ethan grinned. "And you got it. Now what?" Clara looked out at the horizon, her mind racing with possibilities. "Now, we build something better," she said. Back at the bank, the staff buzzed with gossip. "Did you see her husband?" One teller whispered. Ethan Caldwell. No wonder she didn't back down. Another shook her head. It wasn't just him. She had the proof. Grayson, overhearing, stayed silent. He'd underestimated Clara, and it stung. The board, too, was rethinking their approach. Clara's claim had shaken their assumptions about wealth and power. Clara and Ethan drove through the city, the weight of the day settling in. They laughed at you, Ethan said, his voice low. They won't again. Clara nodded, her thoughts on the future. The money was hers, but it came with responsibility. Her father's vision, education, healthcare, opportunity, was now hers to carry out. She felt ready, grounded by Ethan's unwavering support and her own quiet strength. At home, Clara spread her father's letters across the table. Each one held clues, stories of his journey to build an empire. Ethan sat beside her, reading over her shoulder. He was brilliant, he said. Clara nodded, her fingers tracing the faded ink. He hid it all to protect me, she said. Now it's my turn to protect his legacy. Ethan squeezed her hand, proud of the woman she'd become. The next day, Clara returned to the bank, this time with a plan. She met with Lang, outlining her intentions to fund community projects. Lang listened, impressed by Clara's clarity. We'll support you fully, she said, eager to make amends. Clara nodded, her focus sharp. She wasn't here to gloat, she was here to work. The bank, once a barrier, was now a partner in her vision. Word of Clara's claim spread through the financial world. Posts on X buzzed with speculation. Unknown woman inherits billions. Who is Clara Caldwell? Some praised her, others doubted. Clara ignored the noise, focusing on her goals. Ethan, ever practical, hired a team to manage the media. Let them talk, he said. You're doing the real work. Clara smiled, grateful for his grounded perspective. The bank's board invited Clara to a formal meeting, offering her a seat as an advisor. Your insight would be valuable, Vaughn said, his tone far humbler than before. Clara considered it, then declined politely. I'm focused on my father's projects, she said. But I'll work with you when needed. Vaughn nodded, respecting her choice. Clara's power wasn't in titles, it was in action. Clara's first project was a school in her hometown, funded by the account. She visited the site, watching workers lay the foundation. Ethan joined her, his presence steadying her. This is just the start, she said, her eyes bright. He nodded, proud. You're changing lives already. The workers, unaware of her story, saw only a woman with a vision. To Clara, that was enough, she didn't need their awe. Back at the bank, Grayson was reassigned, a quiet consequence of his earlier arrogance. Lang took his place, her approach more inclusive. She reached out to Clara, ensuring smooth access to the account. We're here to help, she said. Clara appreciated the change but stayed focused. The bank was a means to an end, not her world. Her world was the impact she'd make with her father's legacy. Ethan and Clara hosted a small dinner, celebrating her victory. Friends, unaware of the full story, toasted her strength. You took on a bank and won, one said, laughing. Clara smiled, deflecting praise. It was about truth, not winning. Ethan raised his glass, his eyes warm. To truth, then, he said. Clara clinked her glass against his, feeling lighter than she had in years. The media frenzy grew, with outlets digging into Clara's past. They found little, just a quiet life in a small town. Frustrated, they turned to Ethan, whose billionaire status fueled headlines. Clara stayed out of the spotlight, letting Ethan handle the press. They'll move on, he said, and she trusted him. Her focus was on the next project, a hospital, funded by her father's wealth. At the bank, Lang implemented new training, inspired by Clara's case. Never judge by appearances, she told her staff. The tellers, once so quick to laugh, nodded solemnly. Clara's story had changed the bank's culture, even if she didn't know it. Lang sent her a note, thanking her for the lesson. Clara read it, then set it aside. She wasn't here to teach, she was here to build. Clara's hometown buzzed with news of the school. Locals speculated about the anonymous donor, unaware it was Clara. She visited quietly, watching kids play near the construction site. Their laughter fueled her. Ethan, beside her, smiled. This is why you fought, he said. Clara nodded, her heart full. Her father's money was becoming hope, brick by brick, just as he'd wanted. The bank's board, now cautious, invited Clara to review their investment strategies. She agreed, bringing Ethan along. Together, they suggested shifts toward sustainable projects. The board listened, impressed by their insight. Clara's voice, once ignored, now carried weight. She didn't revel in it, she used it. Every decision was a step toward honoring her father's vision. Months later, the school opened, its halls filled with eager students. Clara attended the ceremony, standing quietly at the back. Ethan held her hand, his pride evident. The principal spoke of the donor's generosity, never naming Clara. She preferred it that way. As kids ran past, laughing, she felt her father's spirit. "We did it," she whispered, and Ethan squeezed her hand, agreeing silently. Clara's next project, the hospital, broke ground. She worked closely with architects, ensuring it served the underserved. The bank, now fully cooperative, streamlined her access to funds. Lang became an ally, respecting Clara's vision. Ethan watched it all, marveling at her drive. "You're unstoppable," he said one night. Clara laughed, shaking her head. "I'm just getting started," she replied. Years later, Clara's projects dotted the country, schools, hospitals, community centers. Her father's legacy lived on, not in wealth but in impact. The bank, once a battleground, was now a partner. Clara and Ethan stood together, watching another ribbon cutting. They laughed once, Ethan said, smiling. Clara nodded, her eyes on the future. "Let them laugh, we're building," and they did, together.